נשבעתי ויפי מעון אל מנוחתי. Top of page 16. שירו לאדוני, שיר חדש, שירו לאדוני כל הארץ, שירו לאדוני, ברכו שמו, בסרו מיום ליום ישועתו, ספרו הגויים כבודו בכל העמים נפלאותיו. כי גדול אדוני ומהולל מאוד, נורא הוא על כל אלוהים. יאללה 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 Four lines from the bottom. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tagil haaretz. Yiramayam, 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 umelo. Yiramayam, 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 umelo. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tagil haaretz. Ya'alo sedai v'chol asher bo az yiranenu kol atzei ya'ar lifnei Adonai kiva lishpot haaretz yishpot tevel b'tzedek v'amim be'emunato. Page 17. Adonai malachti agalati yismechu. Or zaru adat tzadik u'lishrei simcha simchu tzadikim b'Adonai v'hodu l'zecher kodsho mihizmor shir anashir chadash ki niflaot asa hoshir lo yimino zroa kodsho odiat megishuat aliyah. Lifnei Adonai kiva lishpot haaretz yishpot tevel b'tzedek ve'amim b'meisharim. Page 19. Adonai malach yirgezu amim yoshev kerubim tanot haaretz Adonai b'tzion kadol v'ramhu. Romimu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romimu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romimu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romimu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romimu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. We rise, page 20. Mizmor le David Habu l'Adonai b'nei Elim, Habu l'Adonai, Kavod va'od yalalai, Habu l'Adonai kevod shemo ishtachavu l'Adonai be'aret kodesh, Kol Adonai al hamayim el hakavod hirim, Adonai hamayim rabim, Kol Adonai b'koach yalalai, Kol Adonai be'adar, Kol Adonai shover arazim, Vayshaber Adonai et azei havanon, Vayarkidem kemo egel Levanon v'Sirion kemo v'nere'imim yalalai, Kol Adonai kotzev ha'odesh, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yechol el hayalot, vayechesov ye'arot, uvehechalo, kulo omer kavod, yalalai Adonai lamabul, Yashava Yishev Adonai Melech Leolam, Adonai Oz Le'amo Yiten, Adonai Yivarech Ramo V'Shalom, Ya la 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 la, Ya la 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 la, Ya la 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 la, Ya la 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 la. Take our seats. Piyut of transition, Lecha Dodi, top of 21. Lecha Dodi likrat kala p'nei Shabbat nikabla. Lecha Dodi likrat kala p'nei Shabbat nikabla. Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad, Ishme'anu el am yuchad, Adonai echad, Ushmo echad, L'shemo tiferet v'litehila, Lecha Dodi likrat kala p'nei Shabbat nikabla. Lecha Dodi likrat kala p'nei Shabbat nikabla. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki mekora beracha, merosh mikerem nesucha, sof ma'aseh b'machshava tchila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala p'nei Shabbat nikabla. Mikdash melech Ir melucha, kol mitzeim mitogafecha, Ravlach shevet b'yemek habacha, v'hoyachamo alayichem la. Lecha Dodi likrat kala p'nei Shabbat nikabla. Hitnari me'afar kumilichi b'det ibatech ami, Ayad ben Yishai beit halach mikoreva el nafshi gilala. Lecha Dodi likrat kala p'nei Shabbat nikabla. Hitoreri, hitoreri, kiva ore, kumi ori, 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 shirdaberi, kevod Adonai, alayik nigla. Lecha Dodi likrat kala p'nei Shabbat nikabla. We rise, turning to page 22, the last stanza. We face the door. בואי ושלום עטרת בלה, גם בשמחה וצוהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. Psalm for Shabbat, page 23, we take our seats. Mizmor shir, shir leyom ha-Shabbat. Mizmor shir, shir leyom ha-Shabbat. Tov lehodol l'Adonai, o lezamer l'shimcha elyon, להגיד בבוקר חסדך, ואמונתך בלילות. מזמור שיר ליום השבת. מזמור שיר ליום השבת. עלי עשור ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון בכינור, כי שימחתני אדוני בפועלך, במעשה ידיך ארנן. מזמור שיר ליום השבת. מזמור שיר ליום השבת. עוד ינובו בסבע דשנים רעננים יהיו, להגיד כי אשר אדוני צורי ולא תבוא. אדוני מלאכי לבש אדוני עושה. עדותיך נאמנו מאוד לבדך נאווה קודש, אדוני לאורך ימים. Mourner's Kaddish, page 24. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalmad yibrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kariv yimru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam v'almei omayah. Yitbarak v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. ויתהדר, ויתעלה, ויתחלל, שמי קודשה בריחו, לעילה ולעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תשבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמה ויאמרו אמן. יהי שלום הרבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום. Amen. We rise as we begin the Ma'ariv service. Everybody's nice and warmed up. We continue with Baruch Hu, page 28. Baruch Hu et Adonai Amivorach. Baruch Adonai Amivorach Le'olam Va'ed. You may be seated. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bivaro maravim v'aravim b'chokhmah potach she'avim. ומביא יום ומביא לילה ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה אדוני צבאות שמו אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני המריב הרבים. Top of 29. אהבת עולם בית ישראל עמך אהבת תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, בשוכבנו ובקומנו, נשיח בחוקך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד, כי הם חיינו ויורך ימינו, ויורך ימינו, ובהם נגע יומם ולילה, יומם ולילה. באהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. We continue page 30 through the bottom of 31. והים שמעו תשמעו את אשר אנוכי מצווה אתכם היום. Adonai Elohechem emet, ve'emunah kol sof v'kayam alenu ki hu Adonai Eloheinu v'yizlato v'anak Yisrael amo, apotim yad melachim. ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם, משה ובני ישראל לחנו שירה בשמחה רבה, ויאמרו כולם, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורתי לא רוסף אלה, מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקר ים לפני משה, זה לי ענו ויאמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. The nighttime was a time of particular vulnerability, particularly if you imagine in a world in which you go out and there are no streetlights. You can imagine all the more so the sense of vulnerability. So the rabbis, in constructing the service for the evening, added a fourth blessing. Both the morning and the evening have a blessing of creation, a blessing of revelation, a blessing of redemption. On the evening service, we add a fourth blessing, and that is one of protection. And Hashkivenu is just that. If you look through it, it's shelter us, it's protect us. And so the message is, we feel more vulnerable, we feel more exposed, and we turn to God for protection. Hashkivenu at the top of 33. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu malkeinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu malkeinu l'chaim. Ufros alenu sukat shilomecha, baruch atah Adonai, hapore sukat shalom, alenu v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim. We rise, page 34, words from Exodus. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael HaShabbat, Lasor et HaShabbat, Ledorotam berit olam, V'shamru B'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat, Lasor et HaShabbat, Ledorotam berit olam, Beni uven B'nei Yisrael, Oti le'olam, Oti le'olam, Oti le'olam, V'shamru B'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat, Lasor et HaShabbat, Ledorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim v'et haaretz, v'shamru b'nei Yisrael et hashabbat, lasor et hashabbat ledorotam berit. Uvayom hashvi Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et Shabbat, Lasor et HaShabbat ledorotam berit olam. Yitkadav yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yamad divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayedecha b'ed Yisrael. Bagala, bagala, uvizman kariv imeru, yesh miraba mivarach, li'alam olam yomaya, yitbarach, yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yipar, v'yitromam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitalev, v'yithalal, shemei kedusha pricho, le'ela ule'ela, mikol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran b'yama, v'imeru. Amen. As we turn to the silent Amidah on page 35, just note that there are a number of insertions for Shabbat Shuvah. You have Zochreinu L'chaim, you have Mi Chamocha Ava Rachamim, so please watch for those insertions in your private prayers. Ose shalom bimromav, oyase shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, bimru imru, amen. Yase shalom, shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, Yase shalom, shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Yase shalom, shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Yase shalom, shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. V'imru. A good, healthy amen. There's a classic Jewish joke of a man called to testify in court. The judge asks, "Sir, how old are you?" And he answers, "I'm 75 until 120. The judge says, "Would you please just answer the question, how old are you?" He says, "I'm 75 until 120. The judge starts to get angry. And the bailiff says, "Perhaps I can help." He says to the man, "Until 120, how old are you?" The man says, "I'm 75. So anyone raised in a Jewish home will recognize this joke. We believe that the years of our lives should be 120. The Torah teaches the very beginning of Genesis. The Lord said, "My spirit shall not always strive with man, for he is also flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. And in this week's Torah reading, we have Moses saying, we have the text telling us, Moses went and spoke these words to all of Israel. He said to them, "I am 120 years old this day. I can no more go out and come in." So if we're to take this text at its word, that would mean that Moses stood before Pharaoh and led his people out of Egypt at the lovely age of 80. And a few months later, he's climbing up and down Mount Sinai several times to get the Torah. My knees hurt just thinking about this. Add to this in terms of the Bible, you have the fact that Abraham has a baby when he's 99 and his wife at the age of 90. I can only have compassion for someone, a woman like this, having such an experience. The point is that no one should ever say, I'm too old. You know, there's another joke. People will say, how can I go back to college and finish in 4 years? I'll be 60 years old. And the traditional response is, and if you don't go back to college, how old will you be in 4 years? You'll still be 60. So we Jews wish people the blessing that they live to 120. This number probably could mean lots of different things. It could symbolically just mean a long life. And by definition, Moses would live the long life. It could mean, I read an article in which it described that in the ancient world, they counted years, a summer as a year and a winter as a year, okay? And so what you've got is twice as many. Suddenly, Sarah giving birth at 45 is not quite as bizarre, okay? I know I addressed this to Rabbi Shalom Paul at one point when I had a chance to speak with him, and he said to me, it's all Nourishkeit anyway. The whole thing is it's just meant to convey a message. Don't worry about the years. So there's lots of different ways to understand this. Nonetheless, at best, 120 is a bit of an exaggeration, one would think, when you wish somebody this. You generally will get one of two responses when you say to people 120 years. One is, I don't want to live that long. Or two, they'll just kind of look and give you the knowing smile. Sure. All right, it does seem a bit of an exaggeration. We know people who passed 100. I doubt anyone in the room knows someone who's made it to 110, right off the bat. So we know something is odd here. And so for many of us, the book of Psalms seems a lot closer to reality. It says there, the days of our lives are 70, if granted the strength, 80, meaning 70 or 80 years. Certainly with improvement in medical care, many of us make it past that. And they say the new 75 is 65. So we can add an extra 10, 15, in my mind, another 20 years. Keep throwing them on. Good. But even if you're one of the lucky ones who lives past 90, maybe even 100, eternal life is not on the table. It's simply not an option. And the question is why? Why didn't God make us so that we could live forever? As Woody Allen famously said, I don't want to achieve immortality in the memory of my loved ones. I want to achieve immortality by not dying, right? Yet we all will die, even if we get close to the 120. So there really are two reasons that our days are numbered, one physical and one spiritual. The physical is simply entropy, the tendency of all things in the universe to fall apart. Everything, the earth, the sun, the entire universe must eventually die. To quote the poet W.B. Yeats, things fall apart, the center cannot hold, all things must end. No matter how careful our diets or how often we go to the gym, we are not built to last forever. Our bodies ultimately will wear down. That's the physical. The spiritual reason is also a powerful one. We have things that we are to accomplish during our brief time on this earth. Our mortality is a constant and powerful reminder of that mission and that it's time-bound. That's the message of Yom Kippur, which is on the horizon as we speak. On Yom Kippur, we pre-live our deaths. The Torah reading of the morning speaks of the death of Aaron's sons. We recite Yizkor. We recite the martyrology in the middle of the day. We wear white, not unlike the shroud in which we will be buried eventually. We avoid life-affirming behaviors such as eating and drinking. We avoid anything that makes things more pleasant like oils, anointing with oils, or wearing comfortable shoes. On Yom Kippur, we are in a sense practicing our mortality, and we are reminding ourselves that our time in this physical world is limited. Matter of fact, the Untitled prayer teaches we are like a fragile vessel, like the grass that withers, the flower that fades, the shadow that passes, the cloud that vanishes, the wind that blows, the dust that floats, and the dream that flies away. Yom Kippur. And this period of time reminds us that time is short and there's much to accomplish. So in this Shabbat Shuvah, the Shabbat of returning, let each of us consider creating different kinds of bucket lists. Not just a bucket list of the things we want to visit and do before we die, but of important actions that we need to take as well within our lifespans. Shabbat Shalom. We're going to turn back to our Sidurim, page 47. We preceded the Amidah with a biblical verse of Ishamru. We follow it with another biblical verse, Vayechulu, from the creation story. Vayechulu hashamayim v'haaretz v'chol tevam vayechal Elohim vayom hashvi'i melakto asher asa vayitbot vayom hashvi'i mikam melakto asher asa vayevarech Elohim el yom hashvi'i vayikadesh oto kivo Shabbat mikom melakto asher bara Elohim lasor. Please rise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora El Elyon Konei Shamayim Va'aretz Magin Avot Bidvaro Mechaye Metim B'Mamaro HaMelech HaKadosh Ein Kamo HaMeniach Le'amo B'Yom Shabbat Kodsho Kiva Meratza Le'aniach Lahem Kiva Meratza Le'aniach Lahem Lefanav Navod B'Yirav HaPachad V'nodeh Lishmo B'chol Yom Tamid Mein HaBrachot El HaHodaot Adon HaShalom Mekadesh HaShabbat U'varech Sheri U'meniach B'Kedusha Ve'amedu Shnei Oneg Zecher Lemase Bereshit Eloheinu Eloi Avoteinu Ritzei V'imnuchateinu Kachenu b'mitzvotecha v'tin chelkenu b'toratecha Sabenu mituvecha v'samchenu b'shuatecha v'taher libeinu li'ovdecha be'emet v'hankilenu Adonai Eloheinu Shabbat Kodshecha Yanuchu V'Yisrael Mekadesh Shemecha Baruch Atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat Yitkara v'yikara shemei rabba Mem b'yom ha'divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael b'gala v'zman kari v'yimeru Amen Yehi shmei rabba mivarach li'alam u'lam me'omaya Yitbarach v'yishtavach v'yitbar v'yirumam v'yitnasei Yirhadar yitalev yidalash mergurusha bricho Mi'ela u'le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata Tizbechata v'nechamata damiran b'yalma v'yimeru Kabbalat Shabbat, Hom Rubaut, Hom Dechol Yisrael, Kodam, Avu Hom V'Shmei V'Yimeru. Yislam Arabamin Shemai V'Chayim, Aleinu V'Yakol Yisrael V'Yimeru. Ose Shalom Bimromal, Uyase Shalom, Aleinu V'Yakol Yisrael V'Yimeru. We rise for Kiddush, page 49. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodesho b'yava u'v'ratzon inkilanu zikaron l'maaseh bereshit. Ki hu yom techila lemikrai kodesh zecher l'tziyad Mitzrayim ki banu v'charta yotanu kidashta likol ha'amim b'shabbat kodecha b'yava u'v'ratzon inchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mikadesh haShabbat. L'chaim. Page 51. Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon hakol, atei gedula le'yotzer breshit, shelo asanu ki goyei aratzot, ve'lo samanu k'mitbegod ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu k'kol amonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishachanim Melech Malchei Amlakim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shehu Noten Shamayim V'Yosei Haaretz Moshe V'Karo B'Shemayim Imal U'Shchinatu Zo B'Gavhei Mirovim Hu Eloheinu Einor Emet Malkeinu Efezulato Kakatu B'Torato B'Yadata Yom V'Hashivota Elivavecha Ki Adonai Hua Elohim B'Shamayim Yimal V'Yalaret Mitachat in od. V'nemar v'haya Adonai l'melech ha'kol haaretz b'yom ha'hu yeh Adonai echad u'shmo echad u'shmo echad. Maybe seated. This Shabbat, our prayers go out to the family of Sarah Wolf. We're observing the yurtzites of Kevin Block, Beatrice Cantor, Harriet C. DeWitt, Laura Duchin, Sam Feinberg, Esther Friedberg, Dorothy Furash, Minda Lazarov, Charlotte Levy, Erwin Isaac Levy, Rolf Meyer, May Mustakoff, Robert Knockenberg, Elaine Patel, Edna Paul, Hirsch Tzvi Raffel, Mildred Ross, Sarah Joseph Russos, Saul Weinberg, and Leon Wiener. All those in a period of mourning, those observing Yortzeit. The words of Kaddish can be found on page 52.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabah. V'yamah divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon v'mechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael v'agala v'zman kariv v'meru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rab v'mubarach v'olam v'amei Amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudashah v'yichu. Le'ela mikol b'chata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran b'alma v'meru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemai v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'meru. Amen. Oseh shalom u'naseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'meru. Amen.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you, Peter, for serving as our Kazumba tonight and making available to the whole community the opportunity to join us. A couple quick announcements. Tomorrow morning, services at 9:30. Please come back and join us. Kol Nidre services are on the horizon. As I mentioned, not at 7 o'clock this coming Wednesday evening. Morning services begin at 9 o'clock, either in person or on YouTube. Also, the evening is also on YouTube. If you want further information on the high holiday services, it's on our daily Boker Tov, it's on the webpage, or you can just ask one of us and we're happy to tell you. Kind of have it memorized. We might have done it a few times. Family services and programming. This is an in-person experience only, so for young families, the activity will be at the park again at 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock. That's the beginning, just to be clear, and then it'll be followed by activities for that, and that is an outdoor experience for families. We're still looking for volunteers. One of the wonderful things about a synagogue is that we take care of those going through life cycle moments. And so we need volunteers to assist with our chesed community, which provides for those people during those moments. And we ask you to contact Margaret Jelinek Lewis, and you can get her information from any of us, from Boker Tov in the mornings, etc. We're happy to get you that information if you would be willing to assist us in this process. Last announcement, religious school begins this Sunday morning. Yay. It's time to get back to Jewish learning and in person, God willing. So we look forward to that. Any other announcements I might have missed anybody can think of? I'm open to suggestions. All right. For those of you who are here, thank you for joining us. For those of you who are online, we're delighted to have you with us and glad that you have the opportunity to participate from the safety of your homes as well. Page 395, we're going to conclude with Hatikva. Please rise. O Lord, balev apnima nefesh Yehudi homia ufate Mizra kadima Zion Sophia O Lord, tikvatenu Hatir Kabbalat Shabbat Liotam Choshi Be'artzeinu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim Liotam Choshi Be'artzeinu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim. Please find someone to extend blessings. Reach in their direction. If you're close by, give them a hug. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichonecha. Adonai panav elecha v'yasim lecha shalom. Shabbat shalom, Gemar Chatima Tova, a good year, a good Shabbos.